The Galactic Academy stood like a shining crown in the center of the universe. It was not just a school. It was the most respected place of learning across countless star systems. The greatest alien minds came here. Their ships filled the sky, and their names filled history books. They came to prove their brilliance, to study problems so difficult that even machines refused to touch them. And among those problems was the one exam that made even the bravest scholars tremble. It was called the infinite equation. A test of math so vast and twisted that solving it was said to be harder than navigating through a black hole. Every alien who tried had failed. Some spent 10 years on it, some spent 50. Entire species worked together, passing down their notes through generations, but none had reached the end. To the galaxy, this exam was more than numbers. It was a symbol, a wall that no one could climb. Whispers spread across the Academy's marble halls that day. A new challenger was about to face it. But this time, it was not an alien genius. It was a human. The announcement shook the Academy. Alien voices rose in confusion. A human? Impossible. Why waste the exam on a species that still uses fire to cook food? Laughter echoed in the chambers. Many believed it was a cruel joke. Others thought it was an insult to the exam itself. But inside the main hall, the truth waited. The chalkboard stood tall, covered in endless symbols from alien languages. Bright lights shone down. Rows of alien professors filled the seats, their strange eyes glowing, their tentacles, wings, and claws folded tight. Every race came to watch. Some for entertainment, others to witness the humiliation of mankind. And then the doors opened. He walked in slowly, a young human, plain and ordinary in appearance. No glowing aura, no advanced tools, just a simple bag slung over his shoulder. His hair was messy, his clothes too simple compared to the flowing robes of alien scholars. He looked like he did not belong. Yet his steps were steady, his eyes calm. The silence in the room was heavy. Alien students whispered behind their hands, their voices carrying a cruel edge. "He will not last 5 minutes. Watch, he will not even understand the first line." The human placed his bag down. He took a piece of chalk between his fingers. For a moment, he did not write. He only stared at the massive board, as if reading not just the symbols, but the story behind them. The audience grew restless. Some laughed openly. One alien leaned to his friend and whispered, "This will be quick." But the human finally moved. The chalk touched the board. Slowly, he drew a line through one part of the equation, then added a symbol in its place. His hand was firm, his eyes sharp. He wrote another and another. At first the crowd laughed harder. "He is guessing. He does not know what he is doing." But then the laughter stopped, because the lines began to make sense. Alien eyes narrowed. Professors leaned forward. What looked like random marks at first began to connect. The human's chalk moved faster, as if his mind was already 10 steps ahead. He skipped no parts. He paused only to glance at the board, then continued with confidence. Minutes passed. The huge hall was silent now. No one laughed, no one whispered. The only sound was the soft scratch of chalk against the board. One alien scholar whispered, "Impossible. He sees patterns we never saw." Another muttered, "He is connecting laws of physics with alien number theory. That should not even be possible." The human did not stop. His hand moved like water. The once endless and confusing wall of equations now looked like a puzzle being solved, piece by piece. Where alien minds saw chaos, he saw order. Where they saw walls, he saw doors. In the back row, an alien with silver scales clenched his fist. He had spent 40 years on this exam, and now a human, a species mocked as primitive, was solving it before his eyes. The human paused for a moment, wiping chalk dust from his hands. He looked at the board, then smiled faintly, as if he already knew the ending. His chalk moved again, faster now. The lines formed curves, the curves formed structures, and the structures led to answers that no alien had ever reached. 10 minutes, that was all it took. When he placed the chalk down, the board was full. The last equation was solved. The hall was frozen. Aliens who had mocked him now sat in silence. Their wide eyes and trembling hands betrayed their shock. Some dropped their pens. Others stared with open mouths. A human had done the impossible. The professor in charge stood up, his eyes burning with disbelief. He walked to the board, scanned the work, checked the details, and then turned back to the crowd. His voice shook. It is correct. Gasps filled the air. The audience erupted. Some shouted in anger, others in awe. Across the academy, the whispers turned into a roar. The infinite equation, the exam that had defeated galaxies, had been solved, and the one who solved it was not an alien. It was a human. The hall was not silent anymore. It was alive with noise, whispers sharp as blades, echoing from alien lips that could not accept what their eyes had seen. The human sat back in his chair, his face calm, as though nothing unusual had happened. To him, it was just another puzzle. To the galaxy, it was an earthquake. Every seat in the great chamber was filled with alien scholars, teachers, and students. They came with arrogance, with pride, ready to see the human humiliated. Instead, they now leaned forward, their eyes wide, their voices tight with disbelief. An alien, with skin like polished bronze, slammed his fist against the desk. His voice carried across the chamber. "This is a trick. It cannot be real. No one could finish it in minutes." Another, a scholar with long feathered arms, hissed back, "The work is correct. Every line matches. I checked it myself. The human has solved it." The hall rippled with arguments. Some shouted for disqualification, some begged for proof. Others simply stared at the board, unable to look away from the white chalk that now held the answer to centuries of alien struggle. The human said nothing. He sat quietly, dusting the chalk from his hands, his eyes never meeting theirs. He seemed distant, almost bored, as if waiting for something. His silence only added to the tension. At the back of the hall, alien guards shifted uneasily. They had been stationed there expecting laughter and mockery, not chaos. Even they could not hide their surprise. One guard muttered to another, "Did you see the way he wrote?" It was not hesitation, it was certainty. In the upper balcony, the Academy's High Council members whispered among themselves. They were the oldest and wisest of their races, beings who had spent lifetimes studying knowledge. To them, this moment was dangerous. If a human could do what no alien could, then perhaps the galaxy had underestimated this species for far too long. The lead professor cleared his throat, demanding silence. His tall frame and glowing eyes gave him authority, but his voice wavered. "Order," he called. "We must have order." Slowly, the voices lowered. The room stilled again, though the air buzzed with restrained emotion. He turned toward the human. "How did you solve it?" Every eye followed. The human raised his head, finally meeting the gaze of those who doubted him. His expression was calm, his voice steady. "I did not make it complicated," he said softly. "You all tried to climb a wall. I only opened the door." A chill spread across the hall. His words, so simple, cut deeper than any equation. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. They had spent lifetimes trying to force the puzzle, too proud to consider a different way. The human had simply seen what they could not. The bronze-skinned scholar stood again, pointing with anger. "You dare mock us? You call our struggle pride? No human should speak of matters they cannot understand?" But his outburst was drowned out by another voice, this one softer yet more terrifying. "He is right." The hall froze. The voice belonged to an elder with silver hair, a scholar who had once been celebrated for devoting 90 years to the infinite equation. His wrinkled hands trembled as he stood. His eyes, dim with age, now burned with realization. I studied this problem for most of my life, and in 10 minutes he has shown what we all refuse to see. It was never the equation that was impossible. It was us. Gasps filled the chamber. The bronze scholar sat down, his anger broken by the elder's confession. The crowd shifted. Suspicion and jealousy still filled the air, but beneath it grew something more dangerous: fear. If humans could see what alien minds could not, then what else could they do? The human stood at last. His chair scraped against the floor, and even that sound echoed through the chamber. He looked up at the board one final time, then turned toward the doors. The professor called after him, his voice cracking. "Wait! Where are you going?" The human paused. He looked back over his shoulder, his eyes steady, his voice calm. "I came to take a test. I have finished it." And then he walked out. The silence he left behind was heavier than the noise had ever been. Aliens sat frozen, their thoughts tangled in fear and disbelief. But in the corners of the hall, not all eyes were filled with doubt. Some burned with something else: curiosity. Among the young alien students, whispers began to form. If one human can do this, what else are they hiding? The High Council retreated into private chambers, shaken and unsettled. Already, messages were leaving the Academy, traveling through networks to every corner of the galaxy. News spread like fire. A human had cracked the uncrackable. On distant worlds, alien leaders read the reports with disbelief. On warships, commanders stared at the newsfeed in silence. Across markets and schools, the story spread in shocked voices. They said it was impossible. And yet, a human solved it. Back in the empty hall, the chalkboard stood as proof. The symbols remained. The answer was there, unshakable, undeniable. The human had not just solved an exam. He had changed the balance of power in the galaxy, and the aliens knew it. The infinite equation was solved. But the storm it created had only just begun. In the following days, the Galactic Academy was no longer a place of calm study. Its marble halls shook with arguments, its classrooms buzzed with rumors, and its courtyards filled with alien students whispering about the impossible human who had walked into their sacred chamber and undone centuries of struggle in only minutes. Some refused to believe it even happened. It must have been staged, they said. A trick with the chalk, a hidden answer planted before the exam began. Others swore on their lives that they had seen every mark, every symbol, and knew it was real. The board itself was left untouched. Professors guarded it day and night. Every line was studied, checked, and checked again. The truth was unavoidable. It was flawless. The human had not only solved the equation, but had simplified paths that alien minds had once thought were dead ends. For many, the realization was unbearable. The bronze-skinned scholar, who once shouted in anger, now sat in silence in his quarters, staring at his own decades of failed notes. His hands trembled as he turned the pages. He saw the same walls the human had walked through with ease. The sound of his pen snapping filled the room. The elder with silver hair became restless too. Though he had praised the human in public, inside he felt a storm. 90 years of his life had been broken in minutes. His pride crumbled like sand, leaving behind only questions. How had a human done it? Why had no alien seen it before? But the ones most shaken were the young. Students gathered in secret circles, speaking in hushed voices. They had grown up believing alien superiority was unquestionable. Now they saw cracks in that belief. If one human can do this, one whispered, what happens when there are hundreds? Another shivered. What if they are not weak? What if they are hiding? The High Council of the Academy could no longer contain the unrest. They called for a closed meeting, summoning the professors, the scholars, and the alien leaders who had traveled from distant worlds to watch the exam. Inside a chamber lit by glowing orbs, voices rose in chaos. He must be tested again. No, this knowledge is dangerous. If humans can solve what we cannot, they will rise against us. Then let them. We cannot deny the truth forever. At the center of the table, the lead professor raised his voice. We are not debating a simple student. We are debating the future of the galaxy. This was not just an exam, it was a wall that held our pride together. And now that wall has broken, silence followed. The words hung heavy. Every alien knew it. The infinite equation was not only a test, it was a symbol of alien superiority. And now that symbol was gone. Meanwhile, the human who had caused the storm walked the Academy's quiet paths alone. He did not join the arguments. He did not boast of victory. He simply watched the alien statues, the grand towers, the shining domes. Where others saw a seat of power, he saw something else, fear hiding behind stone. One evening, as the sun set over the Academy, a group of alien students approached him. Their scales glimmered in the fading light, their eyes full of confusion. "Human," one said, his voice trembling. "How did you do it? How did you see what none of us could?" The human looked at them quietly. He bent down, picked up a small stone, and rolled it across the ground. "You try to carry it on your back," he said softly. "I only pushed it forward." The students stared, not fully understanding. Yet deep in their hearts, they felt a new weight. If a human could reduce their greatest challenge into something so simple, then perhaps everything they knew about their place in the galaxy was a lie. Days passed, but the whispers only grew. News feeds carried the story across systems. Soldiers aboard warships read the reports and wondered if their weapons would one day fail against human minds. Traders in markets whispered that humans might soon control more than they thought. Politicians debated in hidden chambers whether humanity should be welcomed or feared, and then the questions began. If a human could solve the infinite equation in minutes, what else could they solve? Could they break codes used in galactic war? Could they dismantle alien technology that took centuries to build? Could they reshape the laws of science themselves? The exam was no longer about numbers. It had become a mirror, reflecting something the galaxy had refused to see. The unbreakable was broken, and every alien now lived with a new, unspoken truth. Humanity was no longer a small flame in the dark. It was a fire waiting to spread. The Academy's walls could not hold the news. Within hours, the story broke across systems. Holographic screens in alien cities glowed with headlines. Human solves the infinite equation in minutes. Impossible becomes reality. What does this mean for the galaxy? In markets, merchants paused mid-trade to stare at the feeds. In spaceports, captains replayed the footage again and again, watching the human's calm hand move across the board like a blade cutting through stone. On warships, commanders frowned at the reports, their thoughts racing beyond math. If humans could do this, what else could they do? In distant temples, alien priests gathered before their sacred texts. For centuries, they had preached that the infinite equation was proof of divine mystery. Now that proof lay shattered by a species they once called primitive. Some wept, some raged. Some whispered that perhaps the gods had chosen humans instead. Governments were no calmer. Across the galaxy, councils convened in secret. Leaders sat at long tables, their claws, tendrils, and hands tapping nervously. One leader snarled, "If they can solve what our minds could not, then they are a threat." Another hissed back, "Or they are a tool we must control before others do." A third, older and quieter, simply asked, "Or perhaps they are the future." The debate spread like fire. On mining colonies, workers cheered. At last, proof that humans can stand equal. On wealthy worlds, nobles sneered. One accident does not make them great. But in every corner, the same thought lingered. If one human could break the unbreakable, maybe all humans were different than the galaxy believed. Back at the Academy, the human himself avoided the chaos. He sat in a quiet garden, away from reporters and cameras. Birds circled above the alien trees, and the sound of fountains masked the distant noise of shouting voices. To him, it was simple. He had been given a problem, and he had solved it. He did not see the storm his actions had unleashed, but others did. Alien students followed him at a distance, whispering about him, some with curiosity, others with envy, a few with fear. Professors studied the board endlessly, their pride dissolving into bitter silence. The High Council locked themselves away, arguing late into the night. No one could agree what the humans' victory truly meant. And then came the summons. The council demanded his presence again. He entered the chamber with quiet steps, finding the alien leaders waiting. Their faces were drawn, their postures stiff. On the table before them lay hundreds of pages, filled with copied equations and proof of his solution. One counselor leaned forward, his eyes glowing with unease. "Do you understand what you have done?" The human looked at them calmly. "I solved your test." The words, so simple, cut deeper than any weapon. To the counselors, it was not just a test. It was pride, history, control. And now it was broken. Another counselor spoke, his voice sharper. "Do you humans hide other powers? Did your species keep secrets from us? Tell us the truth. What are you?" The human did not flinch. His voice was steady. "We are only what you made us believe we were not. Capable." The room fell silent. The alien leaders looked at one another. The word echoed in their minds. Capable. That night, across countless systems, the galaxy trembled. Ships carried the news further. Scholars abandoned their old notes in despair. Young aliens dreamed of learning from humans instead of mocking them. Soldiers polished their weapons, wondering if they would ever be enough. And humans, scattered across colonies, heard the whispers too. For the first time, they were not laughed at. For the first time, they were feared. The exam was no longer about numbers on a board. It was about power. A shift so subtle yet so sharp, it cut through the entire galaxy. The infinite equation was broken. And so was the balance of the universe. The galaxy did not sleep. The infinite equation had been solved, yet the questions it raised were endless. In the days that followed, the Academy became the eye of the storm. Alien reporters camped outside the gates. Students fought in whispers and debates. Soldiers guarded every corner, not against war, but against knowledge, spreading faster than it could be controlled. The human remained at the center, silent. He did not speak to the cameras. He did not boast in the halls. He walked calmly, as if unaware that his single act had split the galaxy in two. But silence could not last forever. The High Council called him once again. This time the chamber was larger. Leaders from many worlds had gathered. Their eyes burned with fear, with anger, with desperate curiosity. The board with his solution stood behind him, still untouched. The lead counselor rose. His voice shook, though he tried to sound firm. "Human, the galaxy demands an answer. How did you do it? What gave you the power to solve what none of us could?" Every eye fixed on him. The room was heavy with expectation. Some expected secrets of ancient human technology. Others expected lies. Many feared he would reveal weapons hidden within his people's minds. But the human only spoke softly. "You called it impossible because you wanted it to be impossible. You built walls where there were none. You made the path harder because you feared the simple answer." Murmurs spread like fire through the chamber. Some scoffed, others leaned forward. The human continued. "We do not see the universe as you do. You chase perfection. You fear failure. You complicate every line because you fear what lies beneath it. Human, we fail every day. We fall, we break, we lose. But that is why we see doors where you see walls. We are not afraid to be wrong." The silence was sharp. The words were not just about an exam. They were about everything. The elder with silver hair lowered his head. He knew the truth of those words. 90 years he had wasted, too proud to admit a simpler path could exist. The bronze-skinned scholar clenched his fists, his pride shattering. Young students in the crowd felt their hearts racing, their beliefs unraveling. The counselor tried to recover. "So you say your victory was not power, but perspective?" The human looked at him steadily. "Perspective is power. And you never gave humans credit for it." The chamber erupted. Voices rose, some shouting in anger, some demanding calm. The human stood in the middle, unmoved, his words echoing louder than the noise around him. Outside, the news spread again. The human answer. It was replayed on every screen, translated into every tongue. His simple explanation became a storm of meaning. On factory worlds, workers whispered, "He is right. We break every day, yet we stand again. That is our strength." On military ships, soldiers clenched their jaws. If humans see doors where we see walls, then no fortress is safe from them. In alien palaces, rulers whispered to advisors, if they are not afraid to fail, then they are unstoppable. Fear turned to awe, or turned to tension. The human left the chamber quietly, the same way he had entered the exam hall days ago. To him it was over, but to the galaxy it had only begun. The board remained behind, glowing under the lights, a symbol that could never be erased. For centuries, the infinite equation had been a prison for alien pride. Now it was proof that the smallest species in the galaxy could shake the tallest towers. The unspoken truth spread across every world. Humanity had been underestimated. Their strength was not in weapons, not in armies, not in technology. Their strength was in how they saw the world, how they refused to be broken by failure, how they turned walls into doors. And the galaxy knew one thing with certainty: this was not the end, it was the beginning.